The dust devils twisted across the main street of Cedar Ridge like restless spirits, dancing in the burning afternoon heat. The town looked half asleep, like it had given up fighting the sun. It was the kind of place where nothing changed unless something forced it to. Jacob Hart stood alone on the wooden train platform, his boots planted firm, his eyes fixed on the empty tracks stretching far into the horizon. Sweat ran down his back under his worn work shirt, but he didn't move. He had been waiting for over an hour. At 32, Jacob was a man shaped by the land, lean, quiet, and hard. His face carried the marks of long days under the sun and years of silence after loss. 3 years had passed since his wife Mary died from fever, but the emptiness had not left him. It had only settled deeper. Wotte de Bianche needed more than one pair of hands. That was the truth, he told himself. Not loneliness, not the quiet nights, just work. So he had written a letter. He remembered every word. Send a plain, hard-working woman. Someone steady. Someone who understands the frontier. No beauty needed. No fancy ways. Simple. Practical. Safe. That was what he wanted, or what he believed he wanted. The distant whistle of the train cut through the silence. Jacob straightened slightly, brushing a hand through his dark hair. The sound grew louder, echoing across the dry land as the locomotive appeared, dragging smoke behind it like a storm. His stomach tightened. This was it. The train rolled in with a loud screech, steam hissing into the hot air. People began stepping down. Families, travelers, tired faces from long journeys. Jacob watched carefully, searching for her. He expected someone quiet, someone plain, someone who would fit into his life without changing it. Then he saw her. She stood at the top of the train steps, still for a moment as the sun hit her face, and everything inside Jacob went still with her. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, golden like dry wheat, wild despite attempts to tame it. Her green dress was worn from travel, but the way she stood made it look like it belonged to someone far above this dusty town. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Sharp, bright, alive. They moved across the platform like she was studying the world, not fearing it. And when those eyes met his, something inside his chest shifted. Something he had buried long ago. She stepped down slowly, gripping the rail, hiding her nerves behind a straight back and lifted chin. A single bag hung from her hand. Jacob forced himself forward. "Miss Walsh," he said, his voice rough. "Mr. Hart," she replied without hesitation. She looked straight at him. Not shy. Not soft. Like she could see everything. "I suppose you're disappointed," she said calmly. Jacob blinked, caught off guard. A small smile touched her lips, but her eyes stayed serious. "I read your letter," she said. "You wanted someone plain." The words landed heavier than he expected. Jacob looked at her again, really looked this time. There was dust on her dress, tiredness under her eyes, but nothing about her was plain, not even close. "I expected a plain frontier bride," he admitted slowly. "And instead," she said, lifting her chin slightly, "you got me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she shifted her bag in her hand. "Is your ranch far?" 15 miles, Jacob answered. "Good," she said, "because I've been on that train for 5 days, and I'd like to stop moving." There was strength in her voice, not complaint, not weakness. Strength. Jacob took her bag, their fingers brushing for a second. Her hands were not soft. That surprised him more than anything. As they walked toward the wagon, Jacob felt something he had not felt in years. Uncertainty. She climbed into the wagon without waiting for help, settling beside him like she belonged there. The horses shifted, ready to move. "Before we leave," she said, turning to him, "don't we have a marriage to attend?" Jacob froze for a second. The marriage. He had almost forgotten. And they rode through town to the general store where the justice of the peace waited. The ceremony was quick, simple, just words spoken between strangers. But when he placed the ring on her finger, he noticed something. Her hand trembled, only slightly, only for a moment. Then it was gone, just like that. Now she was his wife, and he still didn't understand her at all. As they left town, the sun dipped lower, painting the land in deep gold. The wagon rolled across rough ground, the world opening wide around them. She sat beside him in silence at first, watching everything. Not with fear, with curiosity. "It's beautiful," she said suddenly. Jacob glanced at her. "Most people don't think so." "That's because most people want beauty to be soft," she said. "This isn't soft, it's honest." Jacob looked ahead again, but her words stayed with him. Honest. He had not thought of the land that way before. "You'll think different in winter," he said. "Maybe," she replied. "But I didn't come here for comfort." Jacob studied her quietly. "Then why did you come?" She was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. "My father chose my life for me," she said. "Even chose a husband." Jacob's grip tightened on the reins. I refused. The wagon rolled over a rough patch, shaking them both. "So I chose this instead." "This?" Jacob asked. "A new life," she said simply. "One where I decide who I am." Jacob did not reply, but something inside him stirred, something that felt dangerously alive. As the ranch came into view, small and simple against the wide land, she leaned forward slightly, studying it. "That's yours?" she asked. "That's home," he said. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Then it's ours now," she said softly. Jacob felt something break inside him, not in pain, but like a wall finally giving way. He had asked for something simple, something safe. Instead, he had brought home a storm. And as he helped his new wife down from the wagon, Jacob Hart realized something he was not ready to admit yet. This woman was not going to fit into his life. She was going to change it, completely. Jacob did not sleep that night. The wind moved softly outside, brushing against the walls like it knew something had changed. Inside, the small ranch house felt different too. Not bigger, not warmer, just alive in a way it hadn't been for years. Eleanor. Even thinking her name felt strange. She had taken the bedroom without argument, just as he had offered. Yet he lay near the fire, staring into the dim glow, listening to the quiet sounds from the other room. The soft movement of fabric, water in the basin, the presence of another person under his roof. Not a stranger, not anymore. His wife. The word didn't sit easy yet. By morning, she was already awake. Jacob returned from checking the cattle just after sunrise and stopped in the doorway when he saw her. Eleanor stood near the small garden, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in the soil. Her hair was tied back loosely, but strands had escaped again, catching the early light. She was working, not pretending, not hesitating, working like she belonged there. "You'll want to water in the evening," Jacob said. She turned quickly, slightly startled, then nodded. "I didn't think of that." "How could you?" he replied, stepping closer. It's different out here." She didn't argue. That surprised him. Instead, she listened, and that unsettled him more. After a simple breakfast, Jacob handed her an old pair of trousers and one of his shirts. "You'll need these," he said. "Safer for riding." Eleanor raised a brow, then took them without hesitation. "If your town ladies could see me now," she muttered. "They're not here," Jacob said. When she stepped out wearing them, he almost forgot what he was about to say. The clothes were rough, oversized, tied at the waist with rope, but instead of making her look out of place, they somehow made her look stronger, more real. They moved to the barn. "This is Pepper," Jacob said, guiding a calm mare forward. "You start with her." Eleanor stepped closer, steady, curious. "Hello, Pepper," she said softly, running her hand along the horse's neck. No fear, no hesitation. "You've done this before," Jacob noticed. "A little," she admitted. "In secret." That made him pause. He didn't ask more. Instead, he showed her everything. How to check hooves, how to brush, how to saddle. She listened, tried, failed, tried again. By midday, sweat covered her brow, her arms ached, and her hands had started to blister. She didn't complain once. "Ready to ride?" Jacob asked. Her eyes lit up. "Yes." The first time she mounted, she wobbled. The second time, she steadied. By the third, she found her balance. Jacob watched her closely, arms crossed, ready to step in. But she didn't need him. Not as much as he expected. When she finally guided Pepper in a clean circle, a laugh broke from her lips, pure, bright. "I did it!" Jacob felt something shift inside him again. He hadn't heard a sound like that in a long time. "You did," he said. For a moment, he forgot everything else. Then the dust appeared. Far south. Riders. His smile vanished. "Get inside," he said sharply. Eleanor didn't argue this time. She moved quickly, disappearing into the house as Jacob grabbed his rifle. 4 men rode in. Hard men, the kind that brought trouble wherever they went. Dalton led them. Jacob's jaw tightened. "Hart!" Dalton called, stopping just beyond the yard. "Heard you got yourself a wife." "Not receiving visitors," Jacob replied coldly. Dalton smiled, slow and ugly. "That's a shame. Thought we'd welcome her proper." "You can turn around and leave proper, too." The air grew tight, heavy. Dalton leaned forward slightly. "Boy, you forget who controls the water upstream." Jacob's grip on the rifle tightened. "My rights are legal." Dalton chuckled. "Law don't always reach this far." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Jacob spoke. "Get off my land." Dalton stared at him. Long. Then laughed. "We'll be seeing you, Hart. You and your pretty wife." They rode off in a cloud of dust. Jacob didn't move until they were gone. Only then did he turn back toward the house. Eleanor was already at the door. "Who were they?" she asked. "Trouble," Jacob said. He explained everything. The land, the threats, the kind of men Dalton was. She listened quietly, then said something that made him pause. "I didn't run from one bully to hide from another." Jacob looked at her closely. "You understand what this means?" he asked. "Yes," she said, and he believed her. That afternoon, he put a rifle in her hands. "Out here," he said, standing close behind her. "You need to know how to protect yourself." Her grip was firm, her eyes focused. The first shot missed. The second came closer. By the third, she hit. "Don't pull," Jacob said softly. "Squeeze." She adjusted, fired again, dead center. Jacob nodded. "Good." The sun dipped lower as they worked together. Something had changed between them. Not just husband and wife. Partners. Real partners. That night they sat by the fire, the silence no longer heavy. Comfortable. Alive. Then she asked, "What happened to your first wife?" Jacob froze. "Fever," he said quietly. "She died quick." "I'm sorry." He nodded. "She was gentle, kind, everything a wife should be." Eleanor held his gaze. "And me?" Jacob studied her. Long. Carefully. "I don't know what you are yet," he said honestly. "But I think it's not a bad thing." Something softened in her expression. Not weakness, understanding. Later, as darkness settled and the world outside grew quiet, Eleanor stood by the bedroom door. "I know what's expected," she said. Jacob felt tension rise in his chest. "But I'd rather we take time," she added, "to know each other." Relief washed through him, more than he expected. "We've got time," he said. "I'll sleep out here." She nodded. "Thank you, Jacob." As she disappeared into the room, Jacob lay back near the fire once more. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of something new, something dangerous, and something he could not control. Outside, a coyote howled. Inside, Jacob stared into the fading fire and realized a truth he had been trying to ignore. This woman was not just changing his life. She was changing him. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he wanted to stop it. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. Morning came fast, and with it, a new rhythm neither of them could ignore anymore. Eleanor was no longer a guest in Jacob's life. She had become part of it. Weeks passed, and the ranch slowly changed, not in its structure, but in its spirit. The quiet emptiness that once filled every corner began to fade, replaced by movement, effort, and something warmer. Eleanor worked beside Jacob every day, not behind him, not beneath him, beside him. She learned quickly, faster than Jacob expected, faster than he was ready for. She rode without fear, handled cattle with growing confidence, and carried herself with a strength that earned respect without asking for it. And Jacob watched, at first with caution, then with quiet admiration, then with something deeper, something he could no longer ignore. But the frontier did not allow peace to last long. Trouble returned. It came with whispers first, cattle stolen in the night, a young ranch hand found dead, tracks leading south. Dalton. Jacob knew it. Everyone knew it. But knowing was not enough. Proof was. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the land in deep gold, riders came to Jacob's ranch. Tom Morrison and his sons. "Jacob," Tom said, his face heavy with worry. "We can't let this go on." Jacob nodded slowly. "No, we won't." Eleanor stood beside him, silent, listening. A plan formed. The ranchers would stand together. Watch. Patrol. Fight if they had to. This was no longer one man's problem. It was everyone's. That night, Jacob and Eleanor sat on the porch, rifles across their laps, watching the darkness. "You're not afraid?" Jacob asked quietly. Eleanor looked out at the land. "I am," she said honestly. "But I won't run." Jacob turned to her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "I love you." The words came out rough, like they had been locked inside him for years. Eleanor froze. The world seemed to stop. "I didn't mean to," he continued, his voice low. But you changed everything. Her heart pounded. Jacob, I thought I needed someone simple, he said. Someone who wouldn't disturb my life. A small smile touched her lips. And instead, he said, stepping closer, I got you. Silence stretched between them, heavy, electric. Then she closed the distance and kissed him. Not gently, not carefully, but with everything she had held inside. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. I chose you, she whispered. Not this land, not this life. You. And for the first time in years, Jacob felt whole, but love did not stop what was coming. The next day, everything changed. Eleanor was in the barn when she heard it. Cattle, running, too fast. She rushed outside and saw it. Their herd, being driven away. Rustlers. Her heart slammed against her chest. No time, no hesitation. She grabbed the rifle, mounted Jacob's horse, and rode. Dust filled the air as she chased them, her hand steady despite the fear rising inside her. She fired a warning shot. The riders turned. Two of them broke off and charged straight at her. Gunfire exploded. Bullets tore through the air around her. She dove for cover behind rocks, breath sharp, heart racing. This was real. This was death. Her hands tightened on the rifle. She remembered Jacob's voice. Aim, squeeze, she fired. One rider fell back. The second shot dropped a horse. Chaos broke. But she was outnumbered, and they were closing in. Then, hooves thundered from behind. Eleanor! Jacob. He rode like a storm, rage and fear burning in his eyes. Other ranchers followed. The rustlers fled. One was captured. And with him, the truth. Dalton. Everything led back to him. By nightfall, a posse formed. Dozens of riders, and Eleanor rode with them. Not behind, not hidden. Beside Jacob. They reached Dalton's ranch as the sun fell. Tension filled the air. Guns ready. Men watching. Frank Dalton, the sheriff said, voice shaking. You're under arrest. Dalton laughed. Cold, confident, until his men began to step back. One by one. Fear breaking their loyalty. In the end, Dalton stood alone. And for the first time, he lost. As he was taken away, his eyes burned into Eleanor. This ain't over, he said. But it was. The valley changed after that. Peace returned. Slowly. And with it, something else grew stronger. Jacob and Eleanor. No more distance. No more hesitation. One evening, in the quiet of the barn, Jacob pulled her close. I was wrong, he said softly. About what? Everything. She smiled. Good. His hand moved gently to her stomach. Slight, but real. A new life. Eleanor placed her hand over his. Our child, she whispered. Jacob's eyes softened. Our future. Seasons passed. Hard ones. Dry ones. Days that tested everything they had. But they did not break. They fought. Together. Through drought. Through hunger. Through judgment from others. Eleanor never stepped back. Never became smaller. And slowly, the town began to see. Not a woman who broke rules, but one who built something stronger. Even those who once judged her began to change. Because strength like hers could not be ignored. It could only be understood. And one day, respected. The rains finally came, heavy, loud, washing over the land like a promise kept. Jacob and Eleanor stood on the porch, letting it soak through their clothes, laughing like they had nothing left to fear. "We made it," Jacob said. "We did," she replied. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "You were never what I expected." "I know," she smiled. "You were better," he said. Her eyes softened. "And you," she whispered, "were exactly what I needed." The land stretched wide before them, no longer harsh, no longer empty, but alive, like them. And as the rain fell and the wind carried the sound across the valley, Jacob Hart finally understood something he had been too afraid to admit before. He had not needed a plain bride. He had needed her, the wild storm, the fearless Hart, the woman who didn't just enter his life, but saved it. And in the end, she didn't just shatter his rules, but she gave him something far greater, a home, a future, and a love strong enough to survive anything the frontier could throw at them.